Welcome to Farm Charm Chic. I'm Emily. In today's episode, I am sharing with you 8 French country themed DIYs that are sure to bring that rustic French country touch to your home. They are easy to recreate, and I know that you're going to love them. If you like crafting, DIYs, dupes, hacks, thrift flips, or just creating in general, I would love if you would consider subscribing. If you like any of today's projects, remember to hit that thumbs up. But let's go make some DIYs. I picked this sign up at a garage sale last summer, and I absolutely love the little faux shiplap slats that are in there. Now this sign is cute the way that it is, but those colors do not match my house. They're kind of a little dark and drab for the fall colors that I do. So I'm excited to brighten this up and make it every day. So I take it out to my garage and I just sand it down really good with my electric sander so those letters aren't going to be peeking through the paint. And then I'm just using my little fingernail file here to do a little touch-up sanding if there were any areas that I needed to focus on, or once I got it under better light, I could kind of see some areas I needed to sand a little better. Then I just take a baby wipe and make sure that all of that grit and everything from sanding, all the dust, is totally off of it before I start painting it. I really like the black color that is on this frame, and it makes it so simple to leave it that color, and it really works with the project that I'm doing. So I just tape it off so I won't get any paint splatter or anything on that. And then I just take some chalk paint, and this is where you can customize it to your own decor. I really like the white shiplap look, and so I'm just painting white chalk paint over these slats here. I do one good coat, let it dry, and then go back over and do a second. You can do however many coats it would take to cover your project. Just know that when you're using white paint, you can kind of see my first coat there is not super, doesn't have a lot of coverage, so I'm just using my heat tool there to kind of dry that quickly so I can kind of move through this. The second coat has a lot better coverage since it is that farmhouse style and it is rustic. We want it to look a little bit aged. It's okay if you can see a little of that original base coming through. Now I'm just going to remove the frame to reveal that black portion of the frame, and I will go through and sand all of the edges and the corners to make it look even more distressed. It was already beat up kind of a little bit, so I decided just to embrace that since it is farmhouse, and we're just going to sand it a little bit more and make it a little bit more aged. Now can you see those slats where the shiplap is? You can see the paint pooling there. I really liked how that looked. It just kind of gave it more of that aged look. Now I got this frame at Hobby Lobby. It was on their clearance. It was about $5 it looks like there, and I loved how this looked. It was the perfect size for this. You could do whatever shape of wreath you have, whatever color, make it for Christmas time, fall time. You can change this out however you would like to do that. I have this thick burlap ribbon, and so I am just going to make this hang from the burlap ribbon. So I just cut a length of that, and then I am just lining the edges of that ribbon up. Now I really wanted this to be sturdy hanging from this. I didn't want it to go over the top of the frame to the back. I kind of wanted to put it underneath, if that makes sense. So I just kind of pry that shiplap a little bit until it opens up there, and then I'm just going to feed that burlap ribbon through over to the back edge. Once I have that through and I have my slat pressed back in place, I am just going to cut that ribbon off. It only needs to be over just a little bit. You don't need a lot hanging there. And then I'm just going to use some hot glue to kind of give that a little bit of extra security. I glue the base portion and then the middle, and I just press that down until it's dry. Now it does have these little sawtooth hangers. I do take one of those off. I use a hammer to place it on the back there so I can hang it the correct direction. However you would like to hang it is up to you, or you can even just lay it, stand it up against something. So now I just had to decide if I wanted the wreath to go in front of the burlap ribbon or behind. I chose to leave it behind. That's a matter of personal preference. I am so pleased with how this came out. I absolutely love this. It is perfect for everyday farmhouse. I can even change the wreath out for different seasons. Next time you're at your thrift store or a garage sale, look for these staple pieces like this that maybe you don't love the design and you saw how easy it was to change and make it super neutral. In my stash, I have several of these tags. I feel like a lot of times they come from Christmas time. I've noticed Dollar Tree starting to carry some blink ones for you to use. This one I think came from Dollar General, but I made a tag a couple of years ago on my channel with a beaded garland, and it has honestly been one of the most popular DIYs on my channel. So I thought I would kind of do a different take or an update on just a cute little tag to have for your decor, whether you use it in tiered trays, whether you just use it as an accent piece, but that's what I'm doing here. Now the paper didn't tear off the front of this as easily as some of the other ones I've had, so I'm just using a little bit of water and I'm just kind of moving that around with my finger and my putty knife. This is just getting all of that glue and residue off so I have a completely clean surface to work with. And then I'm just going to give this a basic coat of white paint. Now, as I was doing this, I took some of this paper here and I started kind of distressing it with that to give some texture to it. I really like that, kind of like almost like a wet distressing here. And then my putty knife as well, I kind of use that to kind of rough it up because I like that look. If you're not a fan of that, then you'll just skip that step. Now in my stash, I have a lot of Chalk Couture things. There's some information down in my description box if you're curious about Chalk Couture, but it's just kind of like screen printing or stenciling. So I'm just taking, this is some script that I have here and I love this. I thought this would be really cute. I love kind of that script in the background on some pieces. And so you first put it on your little fuzzy mat there and it's going to help it so it doesn't tear your paint up when you rip it off. I'm sure we've all been there with like Cricut or something when you peel up that transfer paper and it tears half your paint up. So it just kind of stops that from happening. So once I decided the position I wanted this script to be, I wanted it kind of be a little bit at an angle. I thought that looked really cool. I'm just taking a light blue color here and I'm just scraping it on and then just kind of cleaning it up here with the chalk paste. And then you'll just peel that back to reveal your design. And I thought that looked so lovely. I really like how this turned out here. And then these also came in the same collection. You could do whatever you wanted. If you have don't have Chalk Couture pieces, the transfer stuff from Dollar Tree would work really, really good. I know at the craft stores in the scrapbook section, you can buy kits that have all of the different like 3D embellishments and things. I mean, just use your creativity. This is just to give you inspiration here. I really loved the postage stamp on here, and I loved that it said number 34 because I don't know how but Chalk Couture knew this, but 34 is like my lucky number. I don't know why, but that's just been a number that's kind of stuck with me. So I thought it was perfect to use on this. So, you know, if it has no significance to you, that's great. But it did to me when I saw it. I thought, okay, I'll try that. So I thought I would put a little ticking stripe on the bottom because it needed something a little extra. And when I did that, I felt like the top of it needed something too. So I'm just using some washi tape from Dollar Tree and using that as my barrier there so I could have these crisp lines. And I just did the top in the gray. Now I have these beaded garlands here and I'm trying to decide to do the darker or the lighter. Now I chose to do the darker, so it's a matter of personal preference. I buy these at Hobby Lobby. They usually have them at fall and Christmas time and they're like meant for, you know, garlands or things like that, these beaded garlands here. And I buy them when they're 40% off. They end up being $6. It's the cheapest way to buy beads, plus they're already strung for you. So you can see I didn't have to string any of these. I just cut it off. I'll take the extra beads that I took off there so I could tie these off, and I will put those just in my bead jar so I'll have some extra if I need them. And then I'm just taking the end that was already tied for me there. It's a loop, and I just stick that through the tag there and pull the beads right through, and that's what's going to fix this to my tag there. And then of course I thought it would be fun to do a tassel on the end. So I'm just taking a piece of wood and wrapping my twine around it. I do it about 20 times or so, just depends on how thick you want your tassel. Also the piece of wood, the larger it is, the longer your tassel is going to be, so keep that in mind as well. And I just slide that off of the wood there, and then I'm just deciding where I want to make the neck. I've learned that there's the neck of the tassel and the top part is called like the head of the tassel. And so I stick just a little stencil brush through there to create where that neck and the head of the tassel are. And then I just wrap the twine around so that way I can make sure I have a big enough loop in the head of the tassel there. And then you just cut the ends off there. And I'm just tying this onto the end of the beaded garland, and you just want to make sure to get the ends as even as possible. I'll straighten them out and trim them, and then I'll put them in a different position, straighten them out and trim them so you can get as flat of edge on the tassel-y pieces there. And then I like to put water on mine. My sprayer wasn't working, so I just dumped the water on here, which worked fine as well. And I just flatten it out, let it dry, and then you can fluff it up. But I think this turns out so cute. This is going to be perfect, a little accent piece. I love having these as a piece of texture in my decor, and hopefully you guys like this tag as much as you liked my other tag. I would love to know your thoughts on this down in the comments.
I have seen these darling honey jars that are kind of this white finish with kind of a rustic look to them. You can see here they have this embossed detail, and I really wanted to create something of my own like this. And I have this darling honey jar. This was a gift from a good friend of mine. Thank you, Rachel. And she gave it to me for my birthday last year, and it was filled with local honey, which of course was delicious, but very soon gone because we love to eat honey and love to use that as a sweetener in our home. And it had this darling embossing on it, and I thought this would be perfect to kind of dupe those other honey jars and use this to do that. My friend was so sweet when she gave this to me. She said she picked this jar out specifically because she knew I would do some fun DIY with it. So I totally have her permission to paint over this jar. Now, I just put some white chalk paint over this. This is just folk art white chalk paint, and I gave it 2 or 3 good coats. You can put a layer of Mod Podge down if you want, but if you're doing that many coats, it's not really necessary. Now, I'm just taking my emery board to go over that raised detail. I'm starting out very lightly. I like using the emery board because you can use like the little end pieces of it to get in those really small nooks and crannies and do the really detailed area there to make that contrast. And I really just love how this contrast ends up looking on this. Now, I've since learned that these type of honey jars are called, and I'm probably going to butcher how you say this, but a muth jar. It's spelled M-U-T-H. I had no idea. We kept bees for a couple of years, and we had never used any jars like this. We always just used mason jars. So I really love the vintage feel on these jars, and it looked so beautiful with the honey in it. But I'm going to be absolutely honest with you, it was like the most impractical way to like actually use honey on a daily basis. It was actually kind of hard. It was to get it out of here because the opening was so small that you couldn't really stick a knife down in there easy to get it out. It wasn't like a squeeze jar. With my mason jars, the openings are really wide. So I was very happy to kind of redo this and have it just be a decorative piece. Now, as you can see here, I'm looking at this on the neck of that jar with the space where that cork is. There was a little bit of a space there, and I thought I would try this buffalo check ribbon. Now, I didn't actually love the look of that because it wasn't kind of the feel I was going for. I do love the classic buffalo check with the bee theme. I think is very cute and very a very cute look. But I wanted something a little more like dainty or cottage core. So I have this lace ribbon from Hobby Lobby, and it is from the wedding section, but it has an adhesive back. And so it is so easy to use. And I'm just putting that around here, and I'll just cut it off to size, and you don't have to glue it down or anything. It's very easy to remove if I decide I don't like it there. But I really think this looks so cute. And then also the jar has like this little arch detail as you see all around the different edges. I also distressed each of the edges to kind of give it all that worn look. And I just thought that made it so you could see all of those letters so much better on there, the contrast. I put a little twine and a little twine bow. It's just a matter of personal preference how you embellish this, but I'm really pleased with how this comes out. It's going to be the perfect little decor piece for a bee vignette here. I love the detail on the jar and how that came out with that little bit of distressing. Do you guys think this came out really well? Would you use this in your bee decor?
I recently picked up these signs from Dollar Tree. Now, they were with their New Year's line, I think. I could be totally wrong on that, but that's kind of where I found them when I saw them. And I picked them up for their shape because I thought they would be perfect to make a crate out of. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use some wooden crates from the Dollar Tree crafting section, as well as some wooden slats you can see off to the left there that I got off of Amazon. I'll leave a link to those in my description box. Now I'm just taking some E6000 and some hot glue, and I just realized that I'm gluing these backwards, that I put the glue on the wrong side of the crate. I really confused myself. There's not really a dedicated front and back. These crates happen to be the one that have like a laser cut design on one side of them, not on the back side. So in my mind, it was going to make a difference of which way I put them, but in theory, it didn't make a difference at all because I cover it up with the wooden slat. So you'll see what I mean by that. You're just going to take one of your bottle signs here and one crate and glue it to the bottom, just like you can see that I'm doing here for 2 of these. And that's going to make a long crate for you. Now to glue the crates together, I took some wood glue and some hot glue. Probably could have stuck with E6000 and been just fine, but I just went with the wood glue here and it held up great. Now you could easily use paint stir sticks for this project. I just didn't love the little like indentation that you get in the stir stick, so that's why I specifically searched for these on Amazon. And I'm just going to glue them up the side. I was trying to decide how many I did. They're definitely like imperfect sticks, and so you kind of have to see which ones bow a little bit in which direction or which ones will fit the best. So that was kind of what I was doing there. And then I do use some E6000. I did go back in with some hot glue. I don't think I show that, but a combination of the two is the best. Of course, as you probably know from watching a lot of crafting channels or mine, that you get that instant hold from the hot glue and the long-term hold is what comes from the E6000. Now I decided to kind of space my top slat up just a little bit, so that way it kind of had like a little peekaboo moment going through your crate here. I had seen some recently in one of the boutiques I was at that kind of had that, and I really liked the look, so I was kind of going for that here. And then this is just a dowel that I picked up in a package of dowels from Dollar Tree, and it fits right through the hole of that sign perfectly. So I do have to cut down one of the ends though, and how I love to attach these is I just use some little wooden half beads, and you can pick these up at your craft store, you can pick them up on Amazon, and I just am gluing one to one end, and then I will place, kind of put some glue in there and stick my, I almost want to call it a skewer. This is thicker than a barbecue skewer. It is an actual wooden dowel. But you can see I'm just using, those are like the dog toenail clippers that you can pick up at Dollar Tree. I've seen a couple crafters do that, and so I have a pair in my stash just to do that. But, you know, if you have some miter shears, those probably work a little bit better. Anyhow, you just want to cut this down so it's going to fit in there, and then you can cover up that other end with another wooden half bead, and I just hot glue those on, and that's all I do, and that's all the holes you're going to need. Theoretically, this is not going to be something you'll be carrying around. It's just for decorative purposes, so it doesn't need to be like an ultra sturdy dowel on there. It doesn't need to have like the extra glue or anything. Your hot glue is going to be perfect. Now comes the fun part of deciding how you're going to decorate your crate. I decided to go simple with mine. I am loving this sage green color from Folk Art chalk paint, and it's kind of a little bit deeper than like the celery color, and it's got a really green undertone rather than a blue undertone, kind of like the vintage duck egg that I use a lot. So it just, I don't know, for some reason I'm just feeling this color a lot for spring this year, and I do brighten it up with a little bit of some white dry brushing over the top of it, but not much. Now you could put a decal on this. You could jazz yours up as much or as little as you wanted, distress it if you wanted, but I really just loved, I'm kind of getting in all the nooks and crannies here to make sure that all of the paint or all of that wood is covered up. Now here's where I go in with some white chalk paint, and this is just a little bit of dry brushing to give it a little bit of texture. Totally optional, but I love the way that this looks, and since I really have a spot in mind where this is going to go in my home, I was kind of going for the stuff that I like on it. So you can just see I cover every little bit with the dry brushing. Always remember to hit like the sides and the insides of your projects. That way if you see it from any angle, it all looks cohesive. Here it is with some herbs. These are just some faux herbs that I have from like the floral accent section of Hobby Lobby, and I love them. I love the pop of the purple. I want to say I think that's sage in there, and then some lavender that bring in the purple there, but just the different textures and the different leafy greenness of these herbs I think just really are beautiful in there. And that's why I love the green color that's on the paint color that I used on the crate itself, is because it contrasts really well with the greenery. I just really love this and think it's beautiful. I think this is going to add such a fresh look to my home. I have been sitting on this birdhouse for the longest time. It's sat in my stash, and you can see I paid like $3 and change for it. It was on clearance at this little cute farm store in not our neighborhood, but in our town. And I love it, and had this beautiful lattice work on here. And I have this candlestick that I picked up at Hobby Lobby, and it kind of has like this really distressed look to it. And I thought it would be really cute to put on the bottom of the birdhouse and have that birdhouse sit elevated. But all of this lattice work, I want it to match the candlestick. So to do that, I'm just taking my emery board, and I'm going to it takes me about 5 to 10 minutes, maybe not even quite that long, but a little bit of time to sand all of these edges and kind of really have this beautiful lattice work on there. I guess, is this lattice work, scroll work? I'm not really sure. But anyway, whatever it is, it's beautiful, but I just wanted it to match that candlestick so it all looks cohesive together. And so you can kind of see, even on the surface, I'll kind of go on there and sand that paint away. You could even use, if you didn't want to sand, you could just get like a mineral color of paint and do the same effect with paint. I'm using a combination of hot glue and E6000. This is just going to give you that permanent hold with that E6000, and that hot glue is just going to work as that temporary bonding agent while that E6000 cures, so that way it's going to have that quick hold to it. You don't want to use just hot glue in case you were to place this outside, because then if you live in a really hot climate, it can melt the glue, and so you just make sure that you use both the E6000 and the hot glue on something like of this size here. Now, as I'm doing this and I'm centering this as best I can, I'm looking here going, okay, there's this rope on top of here. I don't know what to do with it, because obviously it's not going to hang anymore. So I just took my pliers and I pulled it out, but then realized immediately, like, oh, there's a hole in the top of the birdhouse now. So in my mind, well, I would have used wood filler if I would have had that. So that's probably what I would have suggested. But I took a little wooden bead and I put some twine in it, and I tied a knot at either end of it. So that way the twine fit down into the hole. So I'm just using some glue on that to get that set down in there. And then it's kind of got the little knot at the top to kind of finish off the look. I don't know, maybe it's the bird's chimney. I don't know. In my mind it worked. So, but I really do think this turned out so cute. And I've been sitting on this birdhouse. It sat in my stash for almost 3 years. And I just didn't love the shape of it or how I just wanted to do something with it. And I really think this was the perfect thing to do with it. So hopefully you can use this technique with any other birdhouse shapes or things that you find. This is so fun because you really could leave this out all year long. It's not just a springtime item. What do you guys think of this one? On one of my recent thrifting adventures, I found this pedestal or candle holder. It has this beautiful fleur-de-lis detail on it, but it is this 1970s color of avocado green. Like, it doesn't even translate well on camera. But I have this wood round as well here. This was just in my stash, but you can pick these up at your craft store. You might already have something on hand. And I also have this stone Krylon spray paint that I've been waiting for the perfect project to use it on. And in full transparency, I don't love this spray paint. After using it, I don't know that I would use it on another project. So it may just kind of sit in my stash, but I'm here to try new things. So I'm just kind of reporting back. Now it takes several coats to get the coverage that you want on here. Maybe I should have started by painting this a base color. I don't know, but I'll have to just kind of show you what it looks like in the end. Now on my wood round, I really want this to look like a piece that has been around for a really long time. So I made sure to kind of sand the edges so it kind of gives it a rounded look. And then I'm also going to beat the heck out of it with some pliers. I really want this to look like maybe it was a cutting board type of wood that has just been around for a really long time, something that you found off of the farm. I really wanted it to have this vintage, old world type of look to it. So I really do just kind of beat this up with a couple different pliers. And then when I take my antiquing wax, you'll kind of see what happens. So I'm just going to place that antiquing wax down, and with a baby wipe, I'm going to go over the top of it here, just kind of like we're staining it. And you can see all of those little pock marks that I've made there and all those little scratches. You just want to make sure that your antiquing wax goes into each of those. That's what's going to give this the really aged look. Now here's what our pedestal looks like with that paint on there. It bubbled up in some areas, not in other areas. I don't know. It wasn't my most favorite. I feel like you can do a lot different techniques that I like better, but for the sake of just showing you guys what it looks like, I mean, it looks fine, but I'm not going to be rushing out to buy that paint again to do another project with. So I'm just using some E6000 on here. You can use whatever adhesive you like. I'm letting this sit overnight, so I didn't need like the hot glue for like that immediate hold here. I just ended up setting some heavy stuff on the top of it to kind of clamp that glue down. So I'm just strictly going with E6000 for my glue. And as you saw, I did kind of sand around the edge to get a clean area of the ceramic to adhere to the wood. Now to center this, I'm just turning it all upside down, and I'm just going to kind of place my pedestal down, and then I just kind of turn it a little bit, make sure that I'm kind of even from the sides here. You can measure if you would like. You can do whatever method you would like. I just do the eyeball method. I just wipe up any excess glue that might have seeped out from that E6000. Here's the completed project. It really does turn out beautiful. Again, I think you could save yourself some time. It took forever for this spray paint to dry. So I think if you were to just use some chalk paint on a thing that you get like this, you can kind of see it bubbles up in some areas, not so much in others. So I didn't love that. But I mean, I still think it turns out beautiful. I will definitely use this piece in my decor. Has a very fun farmhouse, French farmhouse vibe to it. And so I really think it's kind of going to be one of those staple pieces. But again, you probably could get the same thing from just using some paint. But what do you guys think about this? Do you love how this turned out?
This bucket came from Dollar Tree, and it has this really cool embossed, like pressed tin look to it. And I'm just removing the sticker from the base there, and I thought this would be really fun to kind of match my home decor. I wanted to kind of have it looked very rustic, like it had been sitting out for a long, long time. Hopefully that's what I achieve here, but I'm just taking my white chalk paint. I feel like chalk paint is going to be your best option on this rather than acrylic paint, simply because of that shiny color or the shiny texture finish that the pot already has on it. You're going to want to use that chalk paint, or at least sand it if you're using acrylic paint. So it takes me a couple of coats to get the coverage that I want. Now this is the fun part of projects like this, is you can paint them to match your home decor. So I'm going neutral because I feel like that appeals to a wider audience. However, different colors would be so fun to do if you have different things that you're wanting to try to match or things like that. I feel like the colors that they came in were really pretty. There was like a green color and a blue color that I saw. However, I felt that they just didn't quite match my decor. And so it's so fun to see items like this and be able to pick them up, bring them home, and match them to your decor. Now, after I get all of the layers of the paint dry, it took me about 3 coats with my chalk paint. I'm just taking some antiquing wax. And you guys, any type of antiquing wax will work just fine. You just want to make sure that it's a water-based antiquing wax. There's several different brands at several different craft stores. Any of them are going to work just fine for you. But I'm just giving this a good coat on here. You can do this as light or as heavy as you want. I really felt like with that pressed tin that is the finish on this, that this antiquing wax is going to go down into all of the little grooves and everything. So after I get all of this covered completely, you can see I have the entire thing covered with this antiquing wax. I also, as you can see here, I forgot to mention that I did paint about 2 inches down on the top of the pot there, and then I also did go in and finish that with some antiquing wax, just so if you were to see inside of the plant that I put in here, you don't see that blue color. You could paint the entire inside if you wanted, but it's not necessary. You can see I'm just taking a baby wipe. I feel like that is the best. A wet paper towel would work just fine. I just don't have. Anyway, long story short, I just keep baby wipes next to my crafting table because it is easy and I buy them in bulk and I use them all the time as I craft. But I'm just going to wipe away not all of the antiquing wax, but a lot of it, leaving behind all of the little nooks and crannies are going to have that nice little antiquing wax, and it's going to give it a nice little look like it's aged there. I do the same thing on the inside of the pot. Now, what I'll do here, because this is what's fun about antiquing wax when you're doing this process, is if it's a little too dark for you, you're just going to take a little bit of your original color on your brush here and just go over the top lightly. This is just going to hit all of those raised areas and give them that nice bright color of paint, like that bright white on there. And I'll go over the entire bucket here, or pail, and it really, really does help brighten those raised areas, and it keeps that antiquing wax in those pressed areas to have that really aged look to it. Now, I know that some people will comment on why I left the bottom. I did go back and paint the bottom. As you can see here, I also went in with some antiquing wax just to make sure that all of it was covered. Again, if you want to do the inside, you can, but if you're going to have a potted plant inside of it like this, you don't necessarily need that. I think this looks absolutely beautiful. It looks aged. It looks rustic. It does not look like it came from Dollar Tree. It looks like something you would get in a high-end store. I think this turned out beautiful. And this is a staple that you can use all year long. Dress it up for different seasons. Change your greenery that's in there for the different seasons. I think this is absolutely beautiful. What do you guys think of this one?
I had some wooden blocks that I had picked up at a yard sale, and I just gave them kind of a whitewash, and now I am just going over them and I am painting a faux ticking stripe to kind of match all of my other French farmhouse bee decor that I'm doing. And I just freehand this on here, so it does not have to be perfect. You can tell that I am not by any means able to paint straight lines, but it ends up looking okay in the end. I was a little skeptical, but I think it ends up looking okay. After I get all of those stripes painted on all of the sides of these little blocks here, I go in with some white paint on a little chip brush here, you can kind of see, and I just kind of distress that even more so it does look a little bit more faded. I have been asked by several people to give a little bit more thorough detail on how to print on tissue paper. So I am just taking a regular piece of copy paper and a regular piece of tissue paper. One side of the tissue paper kind of has a shiny sheen to it, and the other side is more of a dull, softer side. So I like to print with that shiny, slick side down to the paper, so that softer side is what is up, what goes through your printer. So I just take a corner of the tissue paper and move in a little bit on my paper, and then I am just placing tape down to tape the corners really well. After I get my first corner taped there, I will just take a pair of scissors and I am just going to trim the tissue paper down to fit on my paper so I can tape all of the edges down. Now, I have seen a couple of different methods on how to tape your paper down. This is how I've had the most success. You can bring the tissue paper around the edges of your paper if you want to, just as long as that paper fits through your printer and doesn't rip or anything, and this is how I've had the most success. After I cut it down, I just tape all of the corners down, making sure that my tape covers that entire corner so nothing's going to get caught in my printer. I then take a couple of pieces of tape and I tape along the edges. I don't want any air getting underneath that tissue paper and having it bubble up when it goes into the printer when it starts printing, and this helps prevent that from happening. So I will just feed this through my printer just like a normal piece of paper now. So whatever side you put your paper in, so you want the tissue paper where the ink comes through. Does that make sense? So I'm putting it so it will print on the tissue paper on the paper. So when I first printed mine, I printed it and it came out black, very dark. You can see here. And that wasn't really the French farmhouse look that I wanted. So I went ahead and redid my image in Canva, and I just printed these in Canva and did a gray color. You can see this one, the tissue paper did rip a little bit, but it did not rip any of the images, so it's still okay. So I'm just going to, you just cut around these. You can, I don't like to tear it because I don't want to risk tearing my image. So at this point, I just cut these off here until I get my little tissue paper, and you just take that off of the paper, throw your paper away, and you're left with these darling images printed on the tissue paper. Now, I've had several people tell me that they sell water pens to do this with, or specific things to do this with. I don't have those on hand. I'm not going to go buy one because it works just fine to use a little paintbrush and a little bit of water and do the method this way. If you have one of those brushes or want to invest in one of those, go for it. I don't see the need because I do this every once in a while and this totally works. So, but I just want you to know there is that tool out there, and every time I do this, everyone tells me about the pens. I am well aware that there are the pens. This works just fine for me. So I just kind of go around my image a little bit with a little water on that brush, and then you're able to tear away that tissue paper, and it kind of gives you a little frayed edge. So when we decoupage this onto our blocks, you're not really going to see the edge of the tissue paper. So now I'm just taking some decoupage on my brush. I am using a matte decoupage, and I am just putting it all over my surface there very lightly. And I am just using, I'm not really sure what this little tool is called here. It came with my Cricut accessories, but I love it for this because then I don't get my fingers all messed up. And I just center it as best I can. And then using my finger, my dry finger, I'm just kind of pressing it around from the middle outwards to kind of have it not have as many wrinkles. And then once I get to that very outward edge, I use my brayer to kind of get that cemented down on there, if you will. And that helps smooth it all out. And then I go around the edges with a little bit of decoupage first. I let that dry, and then I will go over the entire image with a very, very, very thin coat of decoupage to help protect it and help it so it doesn't like rip or anything like that. Now, do be careful when you're using your brayer on the tissue paper, because tissue paper is a little bit more sturdy than a napkin is, so it can handle a brayer a little better, but you do run the risk of tearing it, so just be very careful with that. Now, the wonderful thing about this is when you first place it on there, you can kind of see the tissue paper outline, but as you do the decoupage around the edge and you do the decoupage over the top of it, literally that edge vanishes. Like, it looks like this is either printed on there. I love how this looks. I love the water slide decal paper. You could easily use that for this project, but I feel like this, you don't get that sheen like you do with the decal paper. I think this is such a wonderful trick. And look at how beautiful these little blocks turned out. I think they turned out so cute. I think they're that perfect touch of farmhouse and French country. And if you wanted to place images around all sides of them, you easily could do that as well. It would be fun to have some different themes on all the different sides of them as well. I would like to thank you so much for joining me for today's compilation video. I hope that you enjoyed all of these DIYs. If you had a favorite, let me know down in the comments. I always love to hear which ones you guys like the best. Thank you so much for watching today. I'll see you next time. Happy crafting! If you liked the video that you just saw and you want to keep crafting together, here's another video that you might enjoy. And as always, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.